Okay, so angles, we'll be spending a few lessons on this, but we'll just be looking at the basics today. Now, the reason I've got a sundial on the cover is that's really, this is where angles sort of begun in a way. Back in the very olden days, they thought there were 360 days in a year, not 365. Okay, so 360 was what a sundial went all the way around, and that's actually quite handy from our point of view, because that's why historically we say that all the way around is 360 degrees. So when we get onto angles, 360 degrees will be our starting point. But I'm going to come on to that in a minute. What I first just want to check you're okay with, I'm sure you've come across this before, but just what parallel and perpendicular lines are. So parallel lines are, of course, lines which will never touch. They're going side by side. They're like railway tracks, if you like. They are parallel lines. And the way that we make it clear on a diagram that they are parallel, we put arrowheads on them. So that means that they are parallel. Okay, so they are parallel lines. Now, the sort of the opposite of that, if you like, is perpendicular lines. So that's where you've got one line going in one direction, and the other line is completely at 90 degrees to that. So that would be that line there. Okay, so they cross at 90 degrees. And if you remember, just like with the right angled triangle, we make it clear that they are at 90 degrees just by like forming that little square. That means that's a 90-degree angle. So that's what perpendicular lines are. So our scheme of work just wanted us to double check that you were comfortable with those words. I don't think there are actually any questions on today's worksheet that refer to that, but I just want to mention it in passing. So back on to angles. Now, think of angles as a turn. So for all of these, I want you to start off thinking of a clock pointing at 12 o'clock. Okay, and that clock hand turning round. Now, if it turns all the way around back to where it started, this is what I was saying about with the sundial. That is 360 degrees. So 360 degrees is a complete turn. All right, you've turned, imagine you're facing the front and you just turn completely around until you're facing the front again. So 360 degrees is a complete turn. Now this is called angles about a point. Okay, so angles about a point total 360 degrees. Okay. Now, so that's a complete turn. Now imagine we do a half turn. Okay, so we've got a clock pointing upwards and we turn round until it is pointing downwards. Okay, that has been a half turn. Okay, now it's halfway round, so it's going to be half of 360 degrees. So 180 degrees is a half turn. Okay, now what do you notice about that black hand and that green hand? That forms a straight line. Okay, so another way of looking at this is we say angles on a straight line. Angles on a straight line total 180 degrees. So we've done a full turn, we've done a half turn. I now want us to move on to a quarter turn. So if we've got a hand pointing upwards to start with, and then we move around quarter of the way round, so it's pointing to 3 o'clock, that has formed a 90-degree angle. Okay, so a 90 degrees is a quarter turn. A quarter of 360 is 90 degrees. And we can say that because that's that 90 degrees, we can say the angle of a right angle is 90 degrees. So with those facts, we can answer some questions that would be a bit like these. Okay, so for example, for question 1 here, we're being asked to work out what angle A is. Now, because they form a straight line, the two angles together, that half turn, all the way round, that must be 180 degrees in total. So to work out what A is, we're going to do 180 degrees. We take away 50 to get 130 degrees. Okay, so let's just go and take another one at random. Let's go and look at question 12. How would we work out what M is? Well, together they form a straight line. So the two angles together are 180 degrees. So M must be 180, take away 63 degrees. Okay, so all the questions on that page are angles in a straight line totaling 180. Now, what you will find is that a question might ask you to work it out. They're going to say find A, and you go and say that A is 130 degrees, and then they might say explain why, give your reason for this. Now, don't go and say, well, what I did, I took 180 degrees, I took away 50 degrees, and that gave me 130 degrees. That's not what they're asking you to do. They don't want you explaining the calculation. They want you explaining why you chose 180 degrees in the first place. So if you were asked to explain why, you would just say because angles on a straight line total 180 degrees. Okay. Now, here we've got some questions where we're testing a different skill. All right, with the ones before, these questions here, these were all angles on a straight line. Okay, all on a straight line. They're all angles on a straight line. These here are all angles about a point. All the way around has to add up to that full turn, has to add up to 360 degrees. So how are we going to work out what A is? Okay, we would say, right, all the way around is 360 degrees. So if we take away the 72 and we take away the 154, that will be what A is. Okay. Let's have a look at question 3, for example. Question 3. How would we work out what C is? Well, all the way around has to add up to 360. So C is going to be 360, take away 76, take away 87, take away 135, whatever that is. Now, what about question 2? Now, with question 2, same idea, but you've just got to remember that angle there is 90 degrees. Okay, that little square is 90 degrees. So to work out what B is, we're going to say it's 360, take away 90, take away 117. So all of the questions on this page, this type of question, these are all working out angles about a point equaling 360. So if you had to explain why A was whatever you got from that green calculation, you'd say the reason is because angles about a point total 360 degrees. Okay, so another rule. Okay, we've done all that turning. We've done a whole turn 360, angles in a straight line is 180. A quarter turn, right angle is 90 degrees. The next thing to know is that the angles inside a triangle always total 180 degrees. Okay, those three together will always add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so we could get questions like this. So I'll just wait for it to move on. I'll tell you what, I'll just make that a little bit bigger. That's quite hard to see. Let's just make that a bit bigger. So if we were doing question 1 here, because angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees, to work out what A is, we're going to do 180 degrees, take away 80, take away 60, and whatever that gives you. I think that's 40 degrees. Okay, so the angles in a triangle always add up to 180 degrees. So again, if you were given a question like number 1, and it's part A might say work out what A is, then part B would say explain why, and you'd say because angles in a triangle total 180 degrees. Do not say, well, I did 180 and I took away 80 and then I took away 60. Okay, now another rule, okay, vertically opposite angles. So say this angle here was, say, 50 degrees. That opposite angle over there will also be 50 degrees. Okay, so not the angle next to it, the angle opposite it. So that's just another tool you've got to be aware of, okay? Normally it will be part of a bigger question, but wherever you've got two straight lines crossing each other, if you know that angle there, which I'm calling y, then that angle over there will be the same. So if you know one of those is 40, the other one would be 40. And the reason you would state that vertically opposite angles are equal. So that's 5 rules we've come across, okay? Angles about a point total 360, rule 1. Rule 2, angles in a straight line total 180 degrees. Rule 3, a right angle is 90 degrees. Rule 4, angles in a triangle total 180 degrees. And rule 5, vertically opposite angles are equal. Okay, so we could get a question like this. You could get a very easy question like number 1, and you would just say A is 45 degrees. Okay, now let's take, for example, question 13. Hopefully your eyesight's better than mine. Okay, question 13. So I can straight away say that Z would be 156 degrees because it's opposite. Okay, vertically opposite angles are equal. And then to work out what X is, for example, well, remember angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. So X and Z together must add up to 180. So if I've just worked out that Z is 156, so X would be 180 degrees, take away 156. And the reason for that is angles on a straight line total 180. So you might get some questions on your worksheet looking a bit like that. And again, yes, see, we've got various bits going on here. Let me just make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay, so question 16. So how would you work out W? Well, W you're going to work out because angles in a triangle add up to 180. So W would be 180, take away 16, take away 83. And X, well, X is just vertically opposite that 83. So X would be 83 degrees. The reason you would give for W would be angles in a triangle total 180. The reason you would give for X is vertically opposite angles are equal. Finally, this is the final rule, guys. It's angles in a quadrilateral. Now, what is a quadrilateral? A quadrilateral is a four-sided shape. Now, what I want you to do, I want you to think of that quadrilateral as being two triangles. I'll put that line in there. It's just going to move in a second. There we go. So what do we know about the angles in a triangle? Well, they add up to 180. So those three green angles there would add up to 180. So you've got 180 degrees in that triangle. All right, and then in the other triangle, the angles in that triangle will also add up to 180. So the angles inside the quadrilateral are going to be two triangles worth. So two lots of 180, which is 360 degrees. So whenever you've got a four-sided shape, the angles add up to 360. So for example, if I had a question like this, there's a four-sided shape. And I knew that that was, say, 70 degrees, that was 100 degrees, and that was, say, 40 degrees, and I had to work out what X was. Well, they all add up to 360. So to work out what X is, I do 360, and I take away the other three angles to get my answer. So that's it, folks. Some of you, that may be brand new. For others of you, that might be all completely familiar because you've seen it all in junior school. Okay. Now, obviously, this has been recorded, so this will, if I've gone a bit fast for any of you, I suggest you watch the recording back on Teams in a minute, and I will process it onto YouTube in about an hour's time when I've just had a moment. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for listening. I'm going to stop the recording now. If you would please work through the worksheet that I've set on Teams, the questions on Dr. Frost, that would be super. Let me just stop the recording.